Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of the one and only Allied Rivals podcast. My name is AJ Herschel. You already know me from the RotoHackers podcast, and I am joined with a very good friend of mine, Caedmon Bauer. Caedmon, how are you doing on this fine evening?
Doing very well. Been doing a lot of chilling out the last few days, and I think that's what pretty much everyone else is doing. And how are you?
I'm doing very well. I've had a great last couple days, so I'm excited to be here. So, Caedmon, how about you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself? Go ahead and start us off.
All right, well, I am Caedmon Bauer, as he said before, and I'm from Wisconsin, so I am a Packers fan, a Brewers fan, a Bucks fan, and if the Badgers are doing well, I root for them too.
You fair weather fan.
Wow. Since Wisconsin has no professional hockey team, I do go for the Blackhawks. Don't really know much about them, so when we talk about the NHL later, AJ will lead us through that.
And just in case, my name is AJ Herschel. I'm a Chicago fan basically all the way through and through, from the Bears to the Bulls to the Blackhawks to the Fire to the Chicago Rush. Rest in peace. I'm a Chicago fan all the way through. When it comes to Cubs versus White Sox, I'm a White Sox fan primarily, but I don't hate the Cubs. That's about it. And so that's why we're the Allied Rivals, because we're friends, our brothers in Christ, but we hate each other's sports teams for the most part, except for the Blackhawks. So let's go ahead.
Which I know little about.
Yes, unfortunately.
Let's dive into the leagues.
Go ahead and start it off. So for our first ever podcast, we're going to start off talking about the National Basketball Association, the NBA. They're getting started finally with this weird 22-team bubble team playoff push down in Orlando. So, Caedmon, let's go ahead. Let's start with this question for the NBA. Who do you think will thrive in the NBA playoff push?
So, AJ, I think that the Bucks and Lakers could continue and both make it to the finals. They were doing so well before. They just got to keep their rhythm. We don't really know what the Lakers are going to look like as they lost Bradley. But they still have Danny Green, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James starting, and those three can make a team. So I think those three could get them to the finals. And from there, I don't know if the Bucks make it. The Bucks have a strong bench, and that could really hurt them, especially since they also have a high-scoring bench. If they're not going to get some other guys like Bradley, he's out. I don't know what's going to happen to the Lakers. The Bucks could come out and win it this time. I don't know. What do you think, AJ? What's going to happen with the playoffs?
Well, honestly, I think it's going to be a really interesting thing just to start with. I mean, the middle teams. You've got Jimmy Butler's Heat. You've got the 76ers. And even while I think, yes, the Bucks and the Lakers are technically the front runners, how many of their wins came against the New York Knicks and the Phoenix Suns? I think that the Celtics could give the Bucks a really hard time. They split their season series. I think the Clippers are going to give the Lakers a really hard time. They won their season series 2-1. But I think the really interesting thing is how the Clippers are going to fare. They spent all season gelling and getting their team together with injuries between George and Kawhi, and they finally had it all together, and bam, the season ended. The season was put on hold, and I think that's good. I don't know if that'll hurt them or not. Lakers are going to have a rough time losing not only Avery Bradley, but now Rajon Rondo as well, and they picked up J.R. Smith, so who knows what's going to happen with that. But I think first off, in the playoff push, I think easily is got to be Lakers, Bucks. I'm big on the Celtics, and I think the Raptors are good, but unless something happens, I don't know if they're enough to get them to the finals.
Yeah, and I would agree. The Celtics beat the Bucks more times than any other team this year. And so I think the Celtics could make a push and kick the Bucks out of the playoffs. We really don't know what's going to happen yet. There's 22 teams in the bubble. But AJ, what do you think should be done about those 8 outside teams that didn't make it?
I mean, I feel like you got to do something because they do have a valid point, and while no one wants to watch the Knicks play the Bulls in a 3-game series, no one wants to see that. at the same time, they do have an obligation to play. You do have obligations to TV networks to host X amount of games this season. And it does make sense for them to say, hey, the other teams still get to play. We're still teams in this league too. So something does need to happen. I know Chicago is one of the big restart cities right now. That's up for debate on whether the bubble team, the outside teams, will be able to play. But I think something has to be done. I think there should be just a little intra-team tournament maybe, but I mean, there's not really much to win when you're in the bottom half of the league. What do you think, Caedmon?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think they should play some sort of games. I think they should have some sort of schedule. Right. No one wants to see, or at least not many people want to see the worst teams play against the worst teams the whole season. No. That's not fun. But the players and the managers are entitled to the season. And the Bulls will still play the Knicks in a season. It'll just be more times. It just wouldn't seem fair to let them go without the rest of the season.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Now, one of the things I do think will be interesting is crazy stories with the Warriors this year. They came into the season with high expectations, another finals push after losing to Toronto, which I think was, if I'm not mistaken, 5 finals in 5 years and 3 wins. But I think with the loss to Toronto being the last one, and then they got injured. Steph got injured. Clay was hobbled. The entire team was a mess. And so they started their rookies for the majority of the season. And they find themselves in the chance of chasing a number 1 draft pick. What do you think about that, Caedmon? How do you think the Warriors are going to fare? Will they be a top team next year?
That all depends, in my opinion, on the injuries. Steph Curry gets injured again. I don't know. I mean, Klay Thompson is still there, and you still got some other great players. They're going to probably have a good draft. They have a good draft pick already. But the draft picks will not be able to take over a team as Curry has done. And so if Curry stays healthy, I could see a really great team. Probably not a finals team or even semifinals. But I think they will definitely make a push, and there will be a challenge for some other teams going into the season.
Interesting. So it's funny because I almost completely disagree to some degree. I think they will be a finals team next year because, and the number 1 reason, that high draft pick, let's say they get number 1. Do you know what that is, Caedmon? It is trade bait. And they can use that to get a top player out of the situation. I mean, how did they get Durant? They paid him a bunch of money. This could be a big trade opportunity. They got Andrew Wiggins, who's been stepped up huge while the Warriors have been a mess this year. So, I mean, they still got D'Angelo Russell, too, who's still around there. I think that the Warriors are going to come back. They're going to be rested now because not only have they had the quarantine time to get back healthy, now they don't even need to play their starters, even if the bubble teams even go. They're going to be back. They're going to be healthy. They're either going to have a number 1 draft pick or they're going to trade it for someone big. That's the thing I think I'm most excited to see, what the Warriors are going to do this offseason to get back into top 2 contention in the league next year. And I think that could be really big for them.
Yeah.
So moving on, let's move on to another league, and we'll get this one out of the way for you. The NHL.
The NHL, which about 75% of people don't know anything about, like me.
Not true, but it is probably the niche sport of the world. But the NHL, I mean, I put our heading as, will the Blackhawks be able to beat Edmonton? But, we're both Blackhawks fans. I got to give credit to the NHL. I'm going to go ahead and say this. Applause to the NHL for coming out with their plan first and doing it sensibly. They start at the end of this month. Probably theoretically, I mean, they've been working almost constantly nonstop since COVID hit. Credit to them. They've done a great job of trying to get the league back up and running. And I'm very curious to see how this play-in is going to be treated because the 5 through 12 teams at this point are now treated as, all right, look, this isn't a playoff round. This is a play-in job to get into the playoffs, where you're already going to have your Lightning, your Bruins, your St. Louis Blues already basically locked in. So, Caedmon, I know you're not the biggest NHL follower, but do you got any thoughts at all?
Hey, I'd just like to see the Blackhawks do something unexpected. I don't expect them to win anything, but it's amazing that they even made it in. I don't know. I know that the Bruins are great, and so we could probably see them take it home again. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see if the Blues will be able to defend their trophy this year. But hey, if the Blackhawks upset the Oilers, I will be so happy. I'll be very, very happy. But we'll go ahead and move on from that for you. We'll move on to something else. And so our next league we're going to talk about, this one I know you're much more in tune with, Major League Baseball. We'll start out with this question for you. What teams will survive and possibly thrive in a 60-game season? What do you think, Caedmon?
Well, AJ, I mean, we have the Nationals who won it last year, and they could definitely take it home again. I think the 60-game season could be good for pitchers, especially. They will play less games, probably get more rest. They will be more rested up for the playoffs when it gets there. The Dodgers could take it home this time. That would be incredible. They've gotten there so many times. What 2 times in the past 3 years? They've lost it both times. Can they pull it off? But another thing, since we are rivals, who's like the NL Central is just a mess. What do you think is going to happen with that?
It is the most competitive division in the NL Central. And it's funny because I was looking back at the playoffs while doing some research for this episode, and I remembered, oh, yeah, the Cardinals won our division last year. And that's depressing. That's really sad. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the NL Central is probably the one that's most up for grabs this year. You got the Cubs coming in. You've got, maybe they do well. Maybe they do well in the 60-game environment. Because the Cubs have known to get hot. They are a team that wins a bunch of games in a row, but could also lose a bunch of games in a row. So they could get hot and take the division. Christian Yelich is still there. The Brewers still have a decent bullpen. They could take it. And the Cardinals, they're there. They could win. Reds could spoil someone's party, and the Pirates are going to be bad, but whatever. So I think that's the most competitive division, and I'd like to say Cubs to win the division, but I just don't know.
And I would like to see Christian Yelich win MVP again. That would just be that'd be a nice thing. I do not, even though the Reds are supposed to be really great this year, I do not see them being the division champs this year. They're almost like they're rebuilding. They have a great team. They have a great roster right now. But I think they still have some things they need to do. And maybe next year they'll win it. But I think they still have some competition to take over, such as the Brewers, Cubs, and Cardinals.
I do think one of the things that I think, to your point about the Dodgers that you were saying, I think they are honestly right now my front runner to win the World Series. I know the Yankees got Garrett Cole. I know that they've got Giancarlo Stanton. I know they've got a dominant roster. But the Dodgers are insane. They've got Clayton Kershaw. They've got Cody Bellinger. They got Mookie Betts. They acquired David Price from the Red Sox. This is the Dodgers' year. This is their chance to finally bring home a World Series that's been evading them, especially for decades, and especially the past 5 years. Like you said, their lineup is stacked. And they, along with the Yankees, in my opinion, are the front runners to win this year. What do you think? So, we've talked a lot about the NL, but AL, you've got Yankees, you've got Rays. You've got the Angels with Trout and Shohei Ohtani. You've got Joe Madden coming back. What do you think, Caedmon? Do you see any AL teams coming out this year?
Well, we do have the Rays, and I could definitely see them coming out and taking a big stance in the playoffs. Right now, 60 games, we don't know how this is going to affect every team. It'll probably affect each one a little bit differently, just depending on budget and just even where they're located. The Dodgers, I could definitely see winning it this year. But the AL, I could see the Red Sox staying hot this year, even though they're not supposed to be as good as they were last year.
Interesting. That's a hot take right there.
Yeah. Well, who knows right now? We've had a long break, and we don't know what anything's going to look like. The Yankees are definitely supposed to be hot, and so I could say that they will probably make it to – they could make it to World Series. I'll just say that.
I do think the Red Sox, honestly, if they make it, I will be shocked because Sale's not going to be there. He's injured. David Price isn't going to be there. But I mean, if somehow they pull some magic out of their hat, they've done it before. But I see the Yankees really taking it. I think the AL Central is also going to be pretty interesting. Got the Twins. The White Sox just, my goodness, the White Sox just saw free agency and said, we have something called money. Who wants it?
Yes.
And they went out and they got, what's his name? They got Yasmani Grandal. They went out. They got Dallas Keuchel, I think is how you pronounce it. Edwin Encarnacion. They went out and paid people. And I could see them making a push. If the team gels together correctly, they could make a push. And I would be so happy because they just spend money on a bunch of players.
Right. And I mean, Yasmani Grandal was with the Brewers, and I think that's going to hurt them. So I think that could be something where the Cubs take the division over. I think they do have a better chance now. I think that the White Sox will probably make a big push, but it's their first year. They're kind of getting it all together. I don't see them going too far in the playoffs.
Right. If they survive a 60-game season, though, I mean, maybe they're the team that comes out hot. I don't know. And it will be interesting to see how the Braves do as well. I think they're going to be very curious because Markakis opted out of the season, but they got Yasiel Puig at all people to come to Atlanta.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really interesting. But I feel like us combined, we're like Dodgers are the NL front runner right now for sure. And then after that, seems like Yankees and Rays we're talking about so far right now.
Yeah. And another question, who do you think could be a contender for MVP?
Christian Yelich, Mike Trout, and I think another one, Shohei Ohtani. Because, I mean, the dude can do everything. He could hit, he can pitch, he could do everything. I think they're probably my front, or I'll say Yelich and Bellinger for NL. And then for AL, I will say Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. What about you? What about you?
I was thinking along the same lines. I mean, Mike Trout, I think, probably has a good chance on that one.
He's always front runner.
Yelich and Bellinger, I think it's going to be close. I think this year it's just totally dependent on batting average.
Yeah,
they're both
and
great fielders
and home runs
and home runs. So I mean, if they get injured, the other one will probably take it.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you could have Giancarlo Stanton hit 50 home runs. You could have Ronald Acuna Jr. hit 50 home runs in a shortened season.
Or we could have Anderson on the White Sox. He has great batting average typically. He had a lot of home runs. But we don't really know what's going to happen with the White Sox yet. They could have a big drop or they could have a big rocket.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird baseball year, but I feel like it's going to be a fun year. After all of the arguments that we had, after the 50, it seems like 50 every day I get a new ESPN to learn, here's a new 50-game proposal. Here's an 80-game proposal. So we finally have baseball, and I could not be happier. I'm excited. So moving on, I know you're not as in tune with this one as much either, but we talk about college football, and I know so this is an interesting one. I'm a Georgia fan. I'm a Georgia fan through and through. I've been brainwashed from a young child to be a Georgia fan. And so it's curious to see how college football is going to play out. Ivy League said they weren't playing. Big Ten's doing conference only. And Pac-12's doing conference only. And I think there's a lot you could say here. So, Caedmon, first off, what do you think about intra-conference play? Just only in not intra-conference, but only in conference
Only
play.
conference.
Only conference play.
That could be fine. I mean, it was the Big Ten's move and the Pac-12's following. I think the rest of the conferences are just kind of trying to decide what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think this COVID-19 situation will probably affect a lot of the smaller schools in a bad way.
For sure.
What do you think about that, AJ?
Well, first off, I think it's killing the MAC, first of all, unfortunately. When the Big Ten decided to back out, that hurt a lot of teams. Ball State, Kent State, Northern Illinois, who I love. All of them are in trouble because they were set to make millions of dollars from playing Big Ten teams. So my worry is that we're going to see a lot of teams, a lot of smaller college teams temporarily have defunct football programs. Like UAB went out a couple years back. They just got their team back. I think they're in danger. And we could see some weird amalgamation in the next year or two of UCF, Boise State, and Northern Illinois all in the same conference, because that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
I'm scared for the smaller teams, especially.
Cool.
Yeah. I am curious, though. Sorry, go ahead.
And no, go ahead.
All right. I was just going to say, I am curious, though, to see with what the SEC is going to decide, because I would much rather, I will say this, I would much rather have a season that gets pushed back to spring for college football, because we still get it, and just have a full college football season with full schedules and everybody's playing the teams, than intra-conference play. Because in-conference play, because in-conference play would be fun, because I'd love to see Georgia play Vanderbilt and Ole Miss and whoop up on them, but I mean it's also fun playing outside schools too. Yeah. And I mean Notre Dame's got it made. They're just going to be with the ACC for the entire year, so I don't know what you want there. But I am worried for smaller teams, but also I'm just worried to see if it'll happen in general.
And AJ, do you think like the ACC and the other two conferences will follow suit with the Big Ten and Pac-12?
I think the ACC probably will. I think the ACC for sure probably will, with Notre Dame being the exception. With the Big 12, I'm not entirely so sure. I'm not so sure, since they're one of the smaller conferences in terms of amount of teams in their conference. I could see them doing interconference, just doing a 10 game season. But SEC is the one where I could see them wanting to play other schools, and they could get out and they'd try to play other major schools, get a couple Army games in there or something. But that's the thing I'm very curious to see, is what's going to happen with the SEC. But I mean, I'm a Georgia fan, so probably at the end of the day they'll follow suit. But I think there's a decent chance we'll see something different.
Cool.
Well, to finish us off, our last subject for the day is the NFL. Caedmon, we'll start with this. We got a couple NFL questions here, but how big of a problem will COVID be for the league?
Well, so far it's been a big problem. They are far behind in the decisions made for the league than any of the other leagues. They're going so slow with all the decisions. At least with the MLB, they were making a lot of arguments, like 50 game, 80 game. What are we going to do? Are we just going to delay it? But the NFL isn't even near that. They're kind of just postponing it. And so the teams, we don't really know what anything's going to look like with the NFL, because no one's really trying to make a push with that.
Right. Do
you see any push happening there, AJ?
I think it's been like a soft push since the beginning, because the NFL is like, all right, we'll let the WNBA have their virtual draft. Okay, that turned out great. Cool. We'll do a virtual draft too. And it seemed like the whole time they've been pressed for time, in the sense that they weren't pressed for time. The NBA was near their playoffs. The MLB was near their playoff, or ready to start their season. They were in spring training. NHL was about to start their playoffs, and all of them were panicking because they're thinking, we're 70%, 80% through our season. But the NFL, they had just wrapped up. They didn't really have anything to worry about. The combine, the draft happened, and I feel like they took too long deciding on what they wanted to do. And now there's a lot of pessimism among the NFL and college football too, but especially around the NFL, about if they'll actually play, because now there's rumors that, hey, if you test positive for COVID before a game, you're out for 3 weeks, and that could hurt a lot of teams.
Yeah, especially with, I mean, the Chiefs just contracted Patrick Mahomes $400 million.
So $500 million. They'll be fine. He'll be fine. If anyone will be fine, it'll be Patrick Mahomes.
If someone like that gets injured, though, not necessarily him, any quarterback or star on the team, that could really change the schedule. Not the schedule, the tables. That could really turn the tables. And so with this quarantine, I don't really know what's going to happen on this. And so if teams like the Chiefs can pull it again, great. If not, I don't know what's going to happen with that. What do you think, AJ?
Well, I think honestly, overall, it's just going to be really interesting to see how teams cope if players get COVID. That's the thing I'm really curious to see, because there are some teams, I think the Ravens, they'd be okay. If Lamar got it, they'll be in trouble. But I mean, if one of their running back gets it, they got 5 more. If the Chiefs, one of their wide receiver gets it, they've got 6 more. But teams, especially like to see, I'm curious to see the Dolphins, who in my opinion had one of the best off seasons, got a lot of free agents, did great in my opinion in the draft and building a solid roster, especially on the offensive line. How are they supposed to gel now? They've missed out on training camp for the most part. That's the thing I'm really going to see. Are we going to see smaller teams? The preseason is going to be cut in half now, unanimously voted on by the NFLPA. They just don't want it. And so there's curiosity what's going to happen there. I'm curious to see what teams are going to be able to handle having a COVID NFL, having a coronavirus NFL. Because the MLB, they published their 100-page book on here's your guidelines. The NFL is just like, yeah, football's going to happen.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
But let's assume coronavirus doesn't mess the NFL that much, Caedmon. Who do you see as a major NFL contender for the let's not get Super Bowl yet, but just have a good season, division winners, let's say.
Well, so since the 49ers lost the Super Bowl last year, I see the Seahawks being a big team there, as well as the Chiefs winning it last year. I think they're still going to be great. Packers, Vikings, we don't really know what's going to happen with that division. It's kind of a mess, as well as just kind of like the NL Central. What do you think on that? I mean, the 49ers probably will be bad, so that's why the Seahawks could take it over. Could have a good year, though, and they could win it.
So I'm going to completely disagree with you on the statement that the 49ers are going to be bad completely. Their defense is scary. And it only got better in the offseason. They still have Nick Bosa. They still have what's his name? They still have Richard Sherman there. He's like a leader to them at this point. Their defense was insane last year, and there's no reason why they shouldn't continue that. And I think that's the scariest part. I think their offense could take a step back. Deebo Samuel, he's hurt him. He's injured. That's a problem. Jimmy Garoppolo's a good quarterback, but I don't know if he's elite technically, so that could be a problem. Raheem Mostert wants a trade. They lost Matt Breida this year to Miami. So if anything's going to suffer, it could be their offense. But their defense, I think the defense is going to be fine. They even got Javon Kinlaw in the draft. I think their defense is going to be fine, but it's their offense that worries me. And so we have like the 49ers. The 49ers and Seahawks is going to be heated. Cardinals could make a playoff push maybe because we've got expanded playoffs now. Yeah. And I've said this on RotoHackers pretty often, so I'll say it here. I'm a big fan of the Cardinals in the sense that I think they're going to do well. I like Kyler Murray a lot. They got DeAndre Hopkins in a trade that was basically highway robbery. They've got a decent defense. They've got a solid offense. They've got Kenyon Drake at running back, who was explosive at the end of last year. Yeah. My only problem is they're going to have to play the Seahawks twice. They're going to have to play the 49ers twice. They're going to have to play Aaron Donald twice. And that's the hard part with the Cardinals. As good as their team could be in an AFC West division, but they're in a really hard spot. So what are any like dark horse teams that you have, Caedmon?
So I'm actually kind of going with Dolphins.
Really?
They did have a very good offseason.
Oh, yeah.
And I see them possibly making a push into the playoffs.
Really?
There are a lot of teams that'll probably do better. But another one would be the Bucks.
Oh, yeah.
They have Tom Brady, and I could see them making a great team out of what they have right now. I don't know about their secondary, but I know that their offense is pretty strong considering what they have. So depending on what their schedule looks like, which they could have a really good season if the NFL actually starts.
Right. So I think that's interesting, though. I think when we're talking about the Bucks, I think that's an interesting one because, their offense on paper is great. You've got Brady. You're going to get Gronk back. You're going to get Godwin. You're going to get Evans. And then you've got Rojo and Keyshawn Vaughn, who I think could be a very great goal line presence for them. It looks great. I'm very interested to see how the Bucks defense is going to do because on paper, they're pretty good with Shaquille Barrett being their number one Mike linebacker. He's their leader. I think that on paper they look great, but their stats were both great. So they're great last year, but also terrible because Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions. So they were tired the entire year. So I'm curious now. You've got a good field manager, you got a good field general in Tom Brady, and that's the thing I'm interested to see about the Bucs is how their defense plays out this year.
Right. And going off of that, as Tom Brady left the Patriots, what do you think will happen to them? They have Cam Newton. What's going to happen with that, AJ?
Well, I talked about this a little bit on RotoHackers too, but I'm not 100% confident Newton's going to start because they drafted Jarrett Stidham for a reason, and he was their front runner. And I think Cam is more competition for Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham knows the offense. He's practiced with them before, something Cam hasn't done. And so for the Patriots, this is a win-win. This is like a no-lose decision. If he turns out great, awesome. He's a great guy, and you get to bring him in for a year. If he turns out he's not doing so hot, I mean, well, he could be a backup. If he turns out to be a problem in the locker room and just is not doing well at all, well, I mean, you only paid him $7 million for a year, so no harm, no foul. Yeah. It's like Belichick played this really smart in waiting this out to get Cam.
Yeah, and Bill Belichick is a great coach, and he will train Cam Newton up. He is kind of a multifunctional player. He can run, he can throw. He could probably do a great job at blocking, kind of like Hill does with the Saints behind Drew Brees. We don't really know what's going to happen. He could be a starter. He might not be. So, I mean, what do you think about that, AJ? I feel like you're kind of pessimistic against Cam Newton.
Oh, I'm not pessimistic against Cam. I think at his best, he's an MVP caliber athlete, which we've seen because he has an MVP award.
Right.
I don't know how much Belichick's going to trust him because he's never really had a running quarterback in his system because he's had Garoppolo, not a runner. Brady, slowest man on the field. Ryan Hoyer, 50 years old. So, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just curious what's going to happen with that.
Okay, cool.
And I do want to say while we're on the topic of the NFL real quick, our division, the NFC North, you're a Packers fan, I'm a Bears fan. What do you think is going to happen with our division? Because the Bears are having quarterback problems. The Packers are, I mean, they're going into year 2 with their new head coach, but they drafted a quarterback, so I don't know what that's going to do to the whole mentality with the team. You've got the Vikings, who are still there, and they're still good. And, I mean, the Lions, I mean, I feel bad for them, but, I mean they could be a problem.
Each team upsets each other team in the division. It seems like each team beats the other team once and loses to the other team. So I remember last year, or have many years, the Packers have beat the team and lost to the team. It's very inconsistent, and I think it has something to do with just that it's such a long time rivalry, especially with the Packers and Bears. The Packers have beat the Bears 99 times. The Bears have beat the Packers 95, and they've tied 6 times. So it's a long rivalry, and it's still really close.
Oh, yeah. It's really interesting with that because just like the Bears, it's a period of dominance pretty much for each team because Bears up to the 50s had dominated, and I would continue through the 80s as well. I mean, there was the Lombardi era. But other than that, it was pretty much Bears. And then 90s on, it's basically been Packers.
Yeah, and I think it's all depending on the quarterback, especially. So you guys, Bears had Jay Cutler. Nothing happened for so long. And so they got Trubisky, and they had a decent season last year. Maybe even you could probably call it good.
No, we did not have a good season last year. That was 2 years ago.
So the quarterbacks, that's what it all depends on. You have Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. They are what made the team great. Jay Cutler made the Bears terrible.
Not entirely. Like let's keep in mind that Rodgers is great, but he's also had a decent supporting cast, especially a wide receiver. You've had Jordy Nelson, you've had Greg Jennings, etc. Yeah,
the Packers have consistently had like a strong amount of wide receivers, especially. But Jay Cutler, he got the Bears nowhere.
Not far.
And so Trubisky came in. He made a push. It didn't last. Kirk Cousins, mean, the Vikings, when they had Teddy Bridgewater, I think they were better than when they have Kirk Cousins. They seemed like more of a team. And when Teddy went, they've gone through some quarterbacks, and it just doesn't seem like they're keeping up with the Packers anymore. The Lions, however, seem to want, like, they're a bad team. They have Matthew Stafford. They're just not up with the rest of them. But I do see them maybe making a couple upset games, maybe being the spoilers for the teams that get into the playoffs, specifically probably the Packers and Vikings.
Yeah.
Also the wild card. Usually a wild card has gone to a team in the division. What do you think about that, AJ?
So I think you're not. I'm going to be honest. I don't think you're giving all the teams in the NFC North enough credit. I'm going to be honest. So Packers, I think, are obvious front runners, but I mean the Vikings, they're good. Kirk Cousins, when he's good, he's really good. When they've got Adam Thielen, a top 5 wide receiver, they've got Justin Jefferson, could be a great number 2 for him. They've got Dalvin Cook when he's healthy, top 5 running back in the NFL, and they've got a great defense led by Harrison Smith. And out of the last 5 years, they've won the division twice, same as the Packers. So the Vikings, I want to give them credit. They made the playoffs last year too. So I think the Vikings, honestly, I don't know if you're giving them enough credit because they've done well. They've done very well in the NFC. They just can't get farther in the wild card than the divisional round, but still. And then to the Bears, their defense is great, but their offense is kind of in turmoil because with Allen Robinson being the only solid, consistent part of their offense, Cohen was consistent, Trubisky was very inconsistent, and then you had the whole kicking problem as well. The Bears they're going to be interesting. And then the Lions, I mean, theoretically, their offense should be great. Matthew Stafford was putting up MVP-like numbers until he got injured last year. They drafted DeAndre Swift, one of the best running backs in the draft. He could be great. They've got Kenny Galladay, arguably a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. The NFC North is just stacked with talent, and it's just going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes down. I think I don't think the Lions I think the Lions definitely have the weakest chance. They've got the weakest defense, especially. But I think the Bears, if their defense comes out, they can make a push. Vikings, I think, have a very good chance to make it. And so do the Packers because they've been very good, and Rodgers is still one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think that's going to be the curious thing with the NFC North. Each of them have a decent chance.
And so since the Vikings lost Stephon Diggs, how do you think that's going to affect them?
I don't know if it's going to affect them that much. Okay, let me actually take that back. Let me say this. It could be a big problem. Diggs is a great number 2. It'll be interesting to see how he does as a number 1 in Buffalo. But he was a great Robin to Adam Thielen's Batman, but he didn't want Robin, so he's going off to play Nightwing. But Justin Jefferson's a great wide receiver. He was one of the best in college coming out of LSU this year. I could see him really working into the Vikings offense. And Mike Zimmer, their coach, is smart. He's a coach. So I think the Vikings could be good, and I don't know. It'll be interesting. Diggs could be a big problem for Cousins without a number 2. But I mean, Washington never really had a really big number 2 when he was there, and he did all right. So I think the loss of Diggs won't be that bad. I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that Stephon Diggs, he was really great, but they still have Adam Thielen, and I felt like Adam Thielen kind of made Stephon Diggs better. And so did Zimmer's, and it's interesting to see, like, will Stephon Diggs get better, or will he kind of like drop not being coached with the Vikings?
Right.
And with Thielen, who he's played with so long. So I would agree. I don't think it's going to hurt the Vikings that much. I think they're still going to have to train some guys to kind of take the number 2 place. Yeah. But I would agree with you.
Yeah. I do think that this is probably one of the most competitive NFL years we've had in a long time because AFC East, used to just be, all right, Patriots, that's it. But I mean, the Bills are there. Patriots could still be a spoiler. I mean, Bills are the front runner, but not that much. AFC South, Titans, Texans, Colts, all have a good chance to win it. AFC West, we pretty much all know it's going to be the Chiefs, but Broncos, Chargers could play spoiler. AFC North Ravens, but Steelers, Browns. The Steelers made it. The Steelers took second in their division with only a defense.
Yeah.
Big Ben back. They've got Juju back, and Big Ben has beard power now. So I don't know what you want me to say about that, but I feel like it's going to be a competitive year in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
If I end up having to eat crow about that, and we have like 5 teams go 12-4, I'll be pretty sad.
If we get to the NFL.
That's a good point. If we get to the NFL. But we'll finish up with one last NFL question here.
All right.
Redskins are changing their team name. We all know it. We all know it's going to happen, etc. Let's not debate about the morals about that right now. What should their team name be? What do you think, Caedmon? What should their new team? Washington blank. You're the head of the Washington Redskins. Or the former Washington Redskins? What's their new team name?
Well, I mean, I don't remember who had this idea, but Red Tails, and that sounds like a very good name.
Mm-hmm.
I would not want to see a name like Warriors put in there, just because I feel like it's very used, and it's just commonly used. It's a high school team name, and I mean, it's not really too much of a big deal, but I think it'd be kind of cool to keep the idea of like red in there. What do you think about that, AJ?
Yeah, I do think it's partially for just the sense of keeping the team, at least try to keep the team colors or whatever similar with the whole red idea. So I convinced you about Warriors not being the best, but I don't want to see anything generic. I don't want to see anything like Tigers, anything like that. I did see one idea on Twitter that was completely different that I love, an idea called the Red Wolves, which I just think is the coolest thing because completely different. I don't know how much it has to do with Washington, but I think it sounds cool. It's inventive. It's nice. There aren't enough wolf teams in America. So I'm down. I would be down for the Washington Red Wolves, but I just don't want to see anything generic. I really don't. But
cool.
I'm very interested to see what's going to happen because the Redskins have been in a bunch of turmoil recently. So
yeah.
We'll see.
Cool.
Well, that's just going to about wrap us up. So we're going to finish with a big question, Caedmon. The NBA is coming back. The NHL is coming back. The MLS is back. And the MLB is coming back all at the same time.
Yeah.
What do you watch? All these games on TV. What do you do?
Well, I mean, I think I'm going to stick with the NBA for now. They're going into the playoffs, and I'm a big Bucks fan.
Yeah.
So I want to just make sure that I just kind of want to keep up with them and want to keep up with my team, man. I mean, once the MLB gets going, I'm going to keep track with that too. I'm going to try to keep track of everything that I can. It's going to be a lot. Definitely not the NHL. I mean, the Blackhawks just seem like they're going to be a sad team this year. But AJ, what do you watch?
Oh my goodness! So I watch all of them. I watch all of them whenever I can at the same time. I need one of those like setups. You just got like 4 screens with 4 sports going at once.
Yeah.
But man. So it's really weird because typically, you've got the NBA and NHL kind of wrapping up around the same time. With the MLB October, NFL's February, there's an order to everything, and now we're just getting them all at once. So I think really NBA, NHL, they're going to finish around the same time, so I don't think that'll be too different. And then the MLB, they're just going to finish probably by November-ish, I would think, October. They're trying to end back in normal, so I think it's going to be pretty normal. But for a little bit, it's going to be a little bit weird with the NHL, NBA playoffs, and the MLB all on at the same time. That's what I'm looking for. That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun. Well, Caedmon, I know you had something you want to finish us off with. You want to go ahead and kick us off here for our ending?
Yeah, sure. So I just kind of wanted to end with a verse from the Bible. 1 Corinthians 9:24 says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." So I think this applies to sports and life. I think it's just saying do your best in whatever's given to you, and that'll get you the prize. If you're doing your best, being selfless, I think that's what it's trying to communicate there.
Yeah, I mean, We're Christians. We love sports. So Christianity influences everything in our lives. So why shouldn't it influence how we think, play about sports and all that too? Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for tuning in to the first ever episode of the Allied Rivals podcast, video podcast. Hope you enjoy. Be sure to leave a comment down. Let me get you in here too. Hope you enjoy. Be sure to leave a comment down below on your thoughts on everything going on in the sports leagues right now. Let us know, what do you want us to talk about? Is there any player, any team? Let us know. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys already know the whole drill. You've been on YouTube before. So I'm not going to explain it to you. We're not going to take a bunch of this. My name is AJ Herschel. Caedmon Bauer, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really excited that we're doing this together. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next
week.
Allied Rivals.